Hello boys and girls. In this video, we will do exercises on vector fields, curl, and divergence. Okay, first recall muna natin yung main concepts on this topic. So una, a vector field in R2 is a function na ang input ay point in R2 tapos ang output ay vector in R2. So nangyayari dito, bawat point in R2, so bawat xy, may associated vector f of xy. Tapos, yung vector na yan, yung components ay itong P tsaka Q na to. Similarly, in R3, kapag meron tayong vector field in R3, bawat point in space, so bawat xyz, may associated vector f of xyz. Tapos itong f of xyz na to, 3D vector to, na yung components ay itong PQR na to. Okay. In both cases, kapag nagdodraw tayo ng vector fields, usually, we draw the output vector field such a way na nagsastart siya dun sa input na point. So, yung f sa R2, yung f of xy, we draw f of xy starting at xy. Tapos, we draw f of xyz starting from the point xyz. Okay, next, recall natin. Given a vector field, dinefine yung tinatawag na divergence at curl ng f. So, one way of computing those two ay by using itong del operator na to. So, yung del operator, ito siya lagi. It's a 3D vector. Tapos with this, the divergence is given by del dot f and the curl is given by del cross f. Tapos, yung div f bilang result siya ng dot product, it is always a scalar. Tapos, yung curl f, dahil result siya ng cross product, it is always a vector. Tapos, recall din natin, kapag yung given na f natin ay in R2, so kapag ganito yung given sa atin, so one way of making sense itong dot tsaka cross product na to with this three-dimensional vector ay we first write f, yung given na PQ as PQ 0. So magdadagdag lang tayo ng third component na 0. Okay, so with this, let's move to exercises. Sketch the vector field f of xy equals y, 1/2 times y minus x by drawing its vectors at the indicated points. So here yung indicated points ay itong siyam na blue points na to. So dito sa exercise na to, pinapasketch yung vector field f using these 9 points. Okay, so pause nyo muna yung video and try to answer this on your own. So to answer this, we evaluate f at each blue point. Tapos yung lalabas na vector, ito-draw lang natin from that point. So, for example, evaluate f at the origin. F of 0, 0 is the 0 vector. So, from the origin, we draw 0, 0. Pero since 0 vector lang yan, tuldok na yung graph yan. Next, f of 1, 0. And x is 1 and y is 0. We get the vector 0, negative 1/2. So we draw that vector starting from the point 1, 0. So ito yung 1, 0. Draw lang natin yung 0, negative 1/2, which points downward. So ganun lang yung gagawin sa bawat point. So continuing, any order, f of 1, 1 is 1, 0. So from 1, 1, 1, 0, that points to the right. Next, f of 0, 1 is 1, 1/2. So from 0, 1, 1, 1/2. Next, f of negative 1, 1 is 1, 1. So from negative 1, 1, 1, 1. So yeah. Next, f of negative 1, 0 is 0, 1. So from negative 1, 0, 0, 1/2. So 1/2 unit upward. Next, f of negative 1, negative 1 is negative 1, 0. So negative 1, 0, that points to the left. Next, f of 0, negative 1 is negative 1, negative 1/2. So, ano yun? To the left, nakababa. And finally, f of 1, negative 1 is negative 1, negative 1. Negative 1, negative 1. So, pababa sa left. Okay na yan. Match the vector field f of xy with one of the 4 plots given on the right. So ito, kaya nyo sagutan to by doing yung parang sa exercise 1 sa bawat isang vector field dito. Or pwede nyo rin sagutan to by analyzing yung bawat vector field dito para mahulaan nyo kung ano yung graph nila. Anyway, pause the video and try to answer this on your own. Okay, dito sa letter A, take note, yung components ng ating vector field ay constant. Constant in the sense na hindi sila nagde-depend sa x at sa y. Walang x at y dito sa vector field ito. Tapos, kung titingnan natin yung vector na negative 1/2, 1/2, it points to sa upper left, diba? Parang ganyan. So, ang nangyayari dito, kahit anong point x, y ang tingnan natin, yung vector na manggagaling doon ay itong vector na to. So, kung you can imagine, yung magiging itsura ng graph nito, parallel vectors na puro ganito ang itsura, which is yung blue plot dito sa kanan. Okay, so letter A, yung graph niya ay ito. For this vector field, let's make the following observation first. So una, if this is the point xy, then yung vector na xy, kapag derive from the origin, ito siya. Tapos take note, yung ating f of xy na given ay half or 1/2 times the vector xy. So that yung f of xy natin, kapag dinraw from the origin, it will point to the same direction as xy pero half yung length. So ito si f of xy. Ayan. So kung i-draw natin yung vector field at any xy, may itsura. Kung ito yung xy, yung f of xy is itong same vector na to pero drawn from xy. Okay. So that, when observing lang, makikita natin na yung f of xy, lagi siyang naka-point away from the origin. Diba? So kahit nandito yung xy, yung lalabas na f of xy will always point away from the origin. Ayan. Kung titingnan natin yung choices natin ng graphs, isa lang naman yung vector field na yung mga vectors naka-point away from the origin, which is itong orange one, which is yung answer for letter B. For this vector field, isang maganda observation ay mapansin na yung x component laging 1. So dahil dyan, laging positive yung x component. Yung y component, sin y, nagbabago-bago siya. Tapos hindi pa natin alam kung positive, negative, or 0. Pero ang mahalaga, positive lagi x component kahit anong xy ang piliin natin. So ano mangyayari geometrically? Sabihin, yung lalabas na vector, kahit saan man yun galing, dapat magpo-point to the right. Or at least, yung vector natin dapat nagli-lean to the right. So with that, makikita natin na itong green na to, hindi siya yung graph nitong f of xy natin for letter C kasi at some points nung graph ng green na to, mayroong mga pointing to the left na hindi nga pwede mangyari dito sa letter C. Ayan, so dahil dyan, yung graph na letter C is this yellow graph. For this last vector field, malamang yung graph niya, itong natitirang graph na lang, which is yung green. So, good job. Okay, pero try na rin natin pakita na ito nga yung graph ng letter D kahit na given pa yung mga graph kanina. Okay. Take note, kanina napakita na natin na kung ito yung point na xy, yung vector na xy, kung i-draw from point xy, this vector will point away from the origin. As kung titingnan natin yung D, yung numerator niya, negative of the vector xy, na mangyari, that's the same vector xy pero nasa opposite direction. Makaturo. So in effect, si negative xy, pag dinaraw siya from the point xy, it will be a vector na nagpo-point towards the origin. Okay, next. Kung titingnan natin yung f of xy na given, yung numerator ay yung red na graph nga, or yung red na vector. Tapos yung denominator na square root of x squared plus y squared. One way of looking at that is, that's the norm of the vector xy. So that, ano nangyayari? Itong given na f natin ay isang unit vector dahil normalized siya. So, in summary, yung mga graph ng mga vectors nitong vector field net sa letter D ay mga vectors na naka-point sa origin na unit vector. So indeed, ito nga yung graph niya. Which vector field on the right has the following plot? Okay, so dito ang given ay yung graph ng isang three-dimensional vector field. So in this figure, ito yung z-axis, ito yung x-axis, tapos ito yung y-axis. Okay, tapos para mas malinawan tayo dito sa graph na to, i-rotate natin yung ating perspective on this graph ng vector field. Whoa! Okay, so take note, meron tayong sample vectors on all octants. Okay. So kung na-imagine na yung graph ng vector field na to, then pause the video and try to answer this question. Okay, bago natin sabihin yung tamang sagot, discuss muna natin yung mga maling sagot. So una, kung titingnan natin letter A, f of x, y, z equals a constant vector. So dahil dyan, you can imagine na parang sa exercise 2 kanina, yung graph ng f of x, y, z equals constant ay mga vectors na pointing to the same direction. Pero kung titingnan natin yung given na graph, hindi lahat ng vectors na to nakaturo sa same direction. So, dahil dyan, hindi pwedeng yung letter A yung sagot. Okay, next tingnan natin letter B. Sa letter B, yung x component laging 1 tapos yung y component laging 2. So that, positive lagi yung x at y components. So dahil dyan, yung mga vectors natin, lahat sila dapat nakaturo sa positive x at positive y direction kung yung letter B yung sagot. Pero makikita natin from the graph, merong mga vectors na nakaturo sa negative x direction, meron ding mga nakaturo sa negative y direction. So dahil dyan, hindi pwedeng letter B yung sagot. Tapos moreover, kung titingnan natin yung third component, z. Yung z na yan, yung value niya nakadepende sa z-coordinate ng starting point ng vector. So that, kung yung z ay positive, dapat pointing upward yung ating vector. Tapos kung yung z ay negative, dapat pointing downward yung vector. Pero kung titingnan natin yung points na negative yung z, so that's, yan yung mga points na nasa ilalim ng xy plane. Okay? Lahat to nakaturo pa rin upward. So hindi negative yung z component. So dahil dyan, hindi talaga pwedeng maging letter B yung sagot. Tapos, for that same reasoning, yung last reasoning natin, hindi pwedeng yung letter D yung sagot dahil dun sa third component nga na Z. Ayan, so therefore, yung sagot ay itong letter C. Which makes sense kasi sa letter C, kung makikita natin, yung Z component laging positive na 3. Makikita natin, sabihin nun graphically, lahat ng vectors nakaturo upward. Tapos, ang ginagawa nitong x at y na components, kung positive yung, kung nasa positive x direction yung point, nakaturo sa positive x direction yung vector. Tapos, ganun din sa y. So, yung C talaga yung sagot dito. Find the divergence and curl of the following vector fields. Okay, so you can answer this using yung del operator. Okay, so pause the video and try to answer these questions on your own. Okay, for number 1, div if, again, it's the del operator, partial with respect to x, partial with respect to y, partial with respect to z, dot with f. So, dot with y, z, e to the x squared, xz, e to the y squared, xy, e to the z squared. Okay, tapos recall, yung dot product na to, hindi actual multiplication yung mangyayari. So that div f is just yung partial ng first component with respect to x. So that's yz e raised to x squared times 2x, chain rule, tapos plus yung derivative ng second component with respect to y. So that's 2xyz e to the y squared, tapos plus yung derivative ng third component with respect to z. So that is 2xyz e to the z squared. Okay, next, yung curl f naman ay yung del partial with respect to x, partial with respect to y, partial with respect to z. This time, cross natin with f. So, nakatulong kung sulat natin ulit yung fyz e to the x squared, xz e raised to y squared, x e to the z squared. Okay, so anong result nitong cross product na to? Okay, yung first component ay partial nito with respect to y minus partial nito with respect to z. So that is x e to the z squared minus x e raised to y squared. Okay, next, yung second component ng curl ay yung partial nito with respect to z minus yung partial nito with respect to y. So that is y e raised to x squared minus y e to the z squared. Then, yung third component ay partial nito with respect to x minus partial nito with respect to y. Okay, so ano yun? Z e to the y squared minus z e raised to x squared. Ayan, so ganun lang. Mag-compute ng divergence sa curl. Dito sa number 2, yung ating vector field ay two-dimensional. So, to compute the divergence in curl, i-apply lang natin yung same formulas pero isusulat natin yung f na ulit, merong third component na 0. So, for div f, in effect, ang gagawin lang natin ay kunin yung partial ng first component with respect to x plus partial ng second with respect to y. So, that's 6xy squared minus 3xy squared, which simplifies to 3xy squared. For curl f, ganun din. Cross product natin yung del operator with f, pero yung f, isusulat natin na merong third component na 0. Okay, so ano makukuha natin? Okay, so yung magiging first component ng curl ay partial nito with respect to y, 0, minus partial nito with respect to z. So that's 0. Next, second component, partial nito with respect to z, which is 0, minus partial nito with respect to x, which is 0 as well. 0. Third component ay partial nito with respect to x, which is negative y cubed, minus partial nito with respect to y, which is 6x squared y. Yan, so ganito lang yung gagawin kapag two-dimensional yung ating vector field. Tapos sa curl, you can generalize na kapag two-dimensional yung f, lagi na yung first at second components ng curl ay 0. Tapos yung third component ay yung q sub x minus p sub y. Okay, for number 3, diretso na natin yung final answer. So, una, div if, again, so ano yun? Partial ng first with respect to x, so that's 6y sine z plus 2 plus derivative ng second with respect to y, it's 0, since walang y dun. Next, plus partial ng last with respect to z, which is negative 3x squared y sine z. Okay, simplify lang natin ng konti. This is 6y sine z plus 2 minus 3x squared y sine z. Okay, next. Yung curl f, kaya para hindi ko na isulat yung buong f ulit, susulat na lang ako ng guide dito sa taas. So, partial x, y, ay, hindi na ako pumipigil sa akin. Partial with respect to z. Okay, so, what is curl f? Yung first component ay partial nito with respect to y, which is 3x squared cosine z minus partial nito with respect to z, 3x squared cosine z. Okay. Second component, partial nito with respect to z, which is 6xy cosine z minus partial nito with respect to x, 6xy cosine z. Okay, then yung third component ng curl ay partial nito with respect to x. So that's 6x sine z minus partial nito with respect to y. So minus 6x sine z. Okay, tapos, kung napansin nyo, pag sinimplify itong curl f, we get the vector 0, 0, 0, or the 0 vector. Turns out, itong curl f na 0 vector, may kinalaman siya dun sa, may pwede tayong sabihin about f, pero sa next lesson na yan. Anyway, ito yung sagot for this exercise. Find the divergence and curl of this vector field f of x, y, z at the point negative 1, 0, 5. Okay, so similar yung solution ito sa exercise 4. So, again, pause the video and try to answer this on your own first. Okay, so to answer this, parang sa exercise 4 lang, meron lang additional step na pag-evaluate dito sa given point. Okay, so with that, una, div f ay equal sa 6x plus 2y e to the xz plus 3z squared cosine xy. Okay, so ito yung divergence ng f at any xyz. Okay, so to evaluate div f at the point negative 1, 0, 5, we just get the value of this expression when x is negative 1, y equals 0, tsaka z equals 5. So that's negative 6 plus 0 plus 3 times 25 times 1. So, plus 75. Okay, this simplifies to 69. Next. Okay, next. Okay, for curl f, again, lagay muna ang code ko sa taas. Partial x, partial y, partial z. Okay, curl f, yung first component ay negative xz cube sine of xy plus 4 minus yan magiging x y squared e to the xz. Okay, second component ay 2 minus yan. So magiging plus z cube y sine of xy. Okay, tapos yung third component ay y squared z e to the xz minus 0. Okay, so ito yung curl f at any xyz. So therefore, yung curl f evaluated at the given point, negative 1, 0, 5, will be itong buong expression na to, again, evaluated at negative 1, 0, 5. Okay, so ano mangyayari? So yung first component ay 0 dahil dun sa sine xy plus 4 minus 0 so y squared. Second component ay 2 plus 0 tapos yung third component ay 0 minus 0. Okay, tapos simplifying this vector, this is the vector 4, 2, 0. Nice. Okay, so take note, kahit in-evaluate na natin at a specific point yung divergence tsaka curl, totoo pa rin na yung divergence ay isang scalar at yung curl ay vector. Okay, so that's all for our discussion on vector fields, divergence, and curl. So kung may tanong pa kayo, you may ask your discussion teacher. Pwede nyo rin naman ako tanungin, kaya lang di nyo ako kilala. So goodbye na lang.